Hi, friends. It's Sherry. I'm the author of The Lighthouse Guide, Love and Advice from a Fellow Human, and I'm popping on today because I have a message for you. The regime is losing control, and I'll tell you how I know why. I'll start today with a story. It's about my father, and it's a story he actually told a number of times as I was growing up. He described how, as a child of divorced parents living with his mother, how she would mete out punishment whenever one of the children had done something wrong. On those days where she had learned that they had some sort of infraction, whatever it might be, she would call you during dinner, call you up to the head of the table, and tell you to extend your palm. And she would take a wooden ruler and strike the palm of your hand. Now, this probably doesn't sound like the worst punishment you've ever heard of, but definitely painful. This method of punishment continued until the day my father was 12 and called up to the head of the table to accept his punishment. He held out his hand, but when his mother went to strike his palm, he describes how his fingers closed over the ruler, and he looked at her and said, "No more." Her method of punishment was only successful as long as she was stronger, heavier, as long as he complied. And so it worked until the day it didn't. And I think about that story a lot. I thought about it a lot growing up, but also when I became a parent as well, because it told me that I didn't want my children obeying because I was bigger and stronger, louder, or I could withhold privileges. I wanted them to obey me because they respected me, because they had a desire to please me. And the way I accomplished that was by treating them as individuals, as humans, deserving of respect, deserving of bodily autonomy, deserving of a voice. I would routinely ask them to comply with some request and attach an explanation of why I wanted them to do that. It didn't have to be long, but I made sure that when I was asking them to agree with or comply with a request, I made sure that they understood I had a reason. It was going to make things more efficient. It was going to um, be safer. It was going to cause us to have less effort on the other end of whatever the activity might be. They learned that I was willing to answer that age-old question, famous of children, why? Because I was willing to answer the question of why, my kids knew that my requests weren't arbitrary. I had reasons, often very good reasons. And if I didn't immediately provide one, they knew that the reason was because there was urgency. I earned their respect because they saw me as a guide, a resource of learning how to navigate this world, how to make decisions, what goes into making decisions. But the reason I'm telling you this today is because our government right now has not earned our respect. They operate from a place of brute force and a lack of transparency. When questioned, there is a refusal to answer and only demand for blind obedience. And that only lasts so long. We've seen populations and local residents stand up and say, no more. Metaphorically, we are, as citizens, grasping the ruler meant to strike our palm. Now, that's simplistic, obviously, because as this regime scrambles to be louder, carry a bigger stick, or make more outrageous threats, we know all too well that not all of those threats are hollow. But our defiance doesn't have to be overt. It can simply be non-compliant. Another story from my childhood. I was not particularly fond of vegetables, but many a night I was left at the dinner table, staring at a pile of vegetables, cold on my plate, and only allowed to leave the table until I had finished them. My parents were attempting to make me comply, but I can tell you for a fact there were many nights that I stared at that pile of vegetables until it was time to go to bed. Because ultimately, unless physically forced, I was in control of whether I ate them or not. And that's the message I'm giving you today. Because the reality is, we as Americans in particular have been steeped in the mythos of rugged individualism. This sense that we decide how we want to live our lives. And unless you are one of those who have succumbed to tribalism or the fascist messaging, the truth is that, like all humans, force as a means of control is only effective so long as we comply. Demanding compliance in and of itself is most effective if you also have an explanation, a reason, and respect. And when you lack all those, you lose control. Because how many of us at some point in our lives have either thought or uttered the words, make me, make me. You want me to do the thing? Make me. And you might think, well, if they have the strength or the technology to a point, they might be able to. Or we can wait them out. Where we are able, we grab the ruler. When we're not, we sit in stubborn defiance, refusing to swallow that which we don't want. And that feels hopeful. Because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty stubborn. So until next time, and in case you haven't heard it today, I'm glad you were born. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, or share this video so that others may see it. Until next time, take really good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.